The CEO laughed. Not politely, loud enough for the room to hear, because the janitor had just said, "I'm your boss." Someone snorted. Someone else pulled out a phone. The CEO waved his hand and said, "Finish cleaning and get out." The janitor nodded and said one last thing. "Then you should probably stop the vote." Before we continue, quick question. What time is it where you're watching this? Morning coffee? Late night scroll? Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. And if you're finding this story worth your time, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It helps more than you think. Matthew Adams didn't look up when Amari entered the boardroom. The emergency shareholder meeting had been called with 40 minutes notice. Board members were still arriving, tablets out, faces tight. Matthew stood at the head of the table, tie loosened, jawline sharp under the recessed lighting. Amari pushed his cleaning cart through the door. Matthew's head snapped toward the sound. "What are you doing?" "Scheduled maintenance," Amari said. He moved to the corner where the waste baskets sat. "Not now." Matthew's voice carried the kind of authority that didn't expect repetition. "Get out." Amari emptied the first basket into his cart. The plastic liner crinkled in the silence. "Did you hear me?" Matthew stepped away from the table. "I heard you," Amari said. He moved to the next basket. A board member near the door shifted uncomfortably. Another checked his watch. The room smelled like coffee and printer toner. Matthew's face reddened. "Security will remove you if you don't leave now." Amari straightened. He looked directly at Matthew for the first time. "I'm actually your boss." The room froze. Then someone laughed. A sharp, disbelieving sound from the back corner. Another board member covered his mouth. A woman near the window pulled out her phone. Matthew stared at Amari. For 3 full seconds, he just stared. Then he smiled. The kind of smile that precedes violence or humiliation. "You're my boss," Matthew repeated slowly. He looked around the room, inviting everyone to share the joke. "The janitor is my boss." More laughter now. Nervous but spreading. "That's what I said." Amari's voice didn't rise. He pulled a trash bag from his cart and replaced the liner in the basket. Matthew walked toward him. Not quickly, with the careful deliberation of someone who knows he holds every card. "Let me explain something to you. I run a $14 billion company. I have 6,000 employees across 11 countries. And you," he paused for effect, "you empty my trash." Amari tied the bag closed. "I do." "So explain to me," Matthew said, his voice dropping to something almost conversational, "how exactly you think you're my boss." Amari picked up his spray bottle and cloth. He moved to the glass wall overlooking the city. "I don't think. I know." The laughter had stopped. The room was watching now. Not because anyone believed Amari, but because the confrontation had a strange weight to it. Matthew hadn't called security, and Amari wasn't backing down. Matthew's smile thinned. "You know what? I'm curious. Say it again. Loud enough for everyone to hear." Amari sprayed the glass. The mist caught the afternoon light. "I'm your boss." Louder. "I'm your boss." Matthew turned to the room, arms spread like a preacher. "Did everyone hear that? The janitor says he's my boss." He pointed at Amari without looking at him. "Finish cleaning and get out, before I have you arrested for trespassing." Amari wiped the glass in slow, even strokes. Then he looked at Matthew again. His expression hadn't changed. Calm. Almost bored. "Then you should probably stop the vote," he said. The words landed wrong. Not threatening. Not panicked. Just factual. Matthew's smile faltered for half a second. Then it came back, harder. "What vote?" "The one you're about to hold." A board member near the back, Frank, the CFO, straightened in his chair. He looked at Amari differently now. Not laughing. Studying. Matthew's voice sharpened. "How do you know about this meeting?" "It's on the schedule," Amari said. He moved to the next window. "Cleaning schedules don't list shareholder votes." "No," Amari agreed. "They don't." The chairman, Howard, cleared his throat. He was 63, silver-haired, the kind of man who'd survived 4 CEOs by never making mistakes. "Matthew, let's proceed with the meeting." Matthew didn't move. His eyes were still on Amari. "He just claimed to be my boss. In front of the board. I want him removed." "I'll handle it," Howard said. But he didn't pick up the phone. He didn't call security. He looked at Amari with something that wasn't quite recognition. But wasn't confusion either. Amari finished the second window. He returned his supplies to the cart. When he pushed it toward the door, the wheels squeaked. Matthew called after him, "You're fired." Amari stopped. His hand rested on the cart handle. He didn't turn around. You can't fire me, he said quietly. Watch me. You already finalized the vote? The question hung in the air like smoke. It made no sense, but it landed in the room with strange precision. Frank's tablet lit up. He tapped it once, then again. His face changed. Matthew saw it. What? Nothing, Frank said. But he was scrolling now. Howard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked at Amari's back. Amari pushed the cart into the hallway. The door closed behind him with a soft pneumatic hiss. Matthew returned to the head of the table. His hands pressed flat against the polished wood. Let's move quickly. The vote parameters are already distributed. Proxy confirmations came in this morning. Howard's voice cut across the room. We should verify quorum first. We have quorum, Matthew said. Too fast. I'd like to verify it anyway. Matthew's jaw tightened. He nodded to Frank. Send the numbers. Frank's fingers moved across his tablet. The screen cast a blue glow on his face. He tapped, paused, tapped again. Then he set the tablet down and looked at Howard instead of Matthew. Quorum is confirmed, Frank said. But there's a flag. What kind of flag? Matthew's voice had an edge now. A share allocation discrepancy. It's showing an unregistered block. How large? Frank hesitated. 18%. The room went silent. Matthew straightened. That's impossible. All major blocks are registered. We confirmed this yesterday. I know, Frank said. He picked up the tablet again. It's showing as a trust. Registered 3 months ago. Whose trust? It's anonymous. Matthew stared at him. Anonymous trusts can't vote. They can if they convert to registered shares before the meeting, Howard said quietly. His fingers were laced together on the table. He wasn't looking at Matthew. And did this one convert? Matthew's voice was climbing. Frank scrolled. 2 hours ago. Someone near the window whispered something. Another board member shifted in her seat. The energy in the room had changed. Not panic, but something close. A shared realization that the math had shifted. Matthew forced a smile. 18% doesn't change the outcome. I have majority support. You had majority support, Frank said. He didn't look up from his tablet. Had. With this block voting, the margin narrows. To what? Frank met his eyes. 52%. Assuming the new shares vote against you. Matthew's smile vanished. We don't know how they'll vote. No, Howard said. We don't. The door opened. Amari pushed his cart back into the room. Every head turned. I said get out, Matthew snapped. I forgot the recycling bin. Amari pointed to the corner where a blue bin sat overflowing with paper. Matthew's face went red. I don't care what you forgot. You're not authorized to be here during shareholder meetings. I'm authorized everywhere in this building, Amari said. He moved toward the bin. No, you're not. Matthew looked at Howard. Call security. Now. Howard didn't move. Howard, Matthew said again. His voice had lost its command. It sounded closer to pleading. Let him take the bin, Howard said. Matthew stared at him. What? The bin. Let him take it. Amari lifted the recycling bin. Paper rustled. He carried it to his cart, emptied it, and set it back down. Then he pulled out his spray bottle again and moved to a section of glass he'd missed. Matthew watched him. The entire room watched him. Amari worked slowly, methodically, as if he had nowhere else to be. Frank, Matthew said, his eyes still on Amari. Who owns the anonymous trust? It doesn't say. There has to be a filing. A registration document. There is, Frank said. It lists a law firm as the trustee. Nothing else. Which firm? Frank gave the name. Matthew didn't recognize it. He pulled out his phone and typed. His thumbs moved fast, then faster. Then they stopped. It's a boutique firm, he said. High net worth clients. Corporate restructuring. Interesting specialty, Howard observed. Matthew's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. His expression shifted from anger to confusion to something else. Something that looked like fear starting to bloom. He looked up at Amari. You can't be serious. Amari didn't respond. He wiped the glass in the same slow circles. Howard, Matthew said. We need to delay the vote. On what grounds? Procedural irregularity. Unverified share block. Take your pick. Howard tapped his pen against his notepad. The shares were registered legally. The conversion was filed properly. There's no irregularity. Then we verify ownership before proceeding. That could take weeks. I don't care. Matthew's voice cracked slightly. We're not voting until we know who owns those shares. Amari finished the glass. He returned the spray bottle to his cart. As he pushed it toward the door, he spoke without turning around. I warned you, he said. The door closed. Frank's tablet chimed. He looked at the screen. His face went pale. What? Matthew demanded. The share block just submitted a proxy vote. How? The meeting hasn't started. Emergency votes allow advance submission if quorum is confirmed. And? Frank's voice came out flat. They voted against you. On everything. Matthew sat down. Not because he chose to. Because his legs gave out. He gripped the edge of the table and lowered himself into the chair. Around him, board members exchanged glances. Some confused. Some calculating. One woman near the back was already typing on her phone. We need to understand what's happening, Matthew said. His voice had lost its polish. It sounded raw now. Human. Frank, pull the share registry. All of it. I want names, dates, transaction histories. That'll take hours, Frank said. Then start now. Frank nodded and left the room. His tablet glowed in his hand as he pushed through the door. Howard folded his hands. Matthew, we should proceed with the vote. No. We have quorum. The proxies are submitted. Legally, we're required to. I said no. Matthew's voice rose. Not until we verify the ownership of that share block. The ownership is verified. It's a registered trust. I want to know who's behind it. That's not required for the vote to proceed. Matthew slammed his palm on the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. I'm the CEO of this company. I'm telling you we're delaying the vote. Howard didn't flinch. And I'm the chairman. I'm telling you we're not. They stared at each other. The rest of the board watched. No one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the HVAC system pushing filtered air through the vents. Finally, Howard picked up his tablet. All in favor of proceeding with the vote, raise your hand. 3 hands went up. Then 4. Then 6. Matthew counted them. His face drained of color. You're voting against me. All of you. We're voting to follow procedure, Howard said. That's not the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. Matthew stood. He pointed at the door. That janitor, whoever he is, just walked in here and said he owns me. And now you're letting him vote me out. We don't know if he owns anything, Howard said calmly. And we don't know how the vote will go. Yes, we do. Matthew's voice dropped to something quieter. More dangerous. You've already decided. The door opened again. Amari entered. He wasn't pushing his cart this time. He carried a small black briefcase. Matthew's breath caught. What are you doing? I have a seat at this table, Amari said. He walked to an empty chair 3 seats from Matthew. No, you don't. 18% says I do. Amari set the briefcase on the table. He opened it. Inside were documents. Financial reports. Shareholder agreements. All of them stamped with the company seal. Matthew's voice came out strangled. Where did you get those? From the company, Amari said. I'm a shareholder. I'm entitled to them. Howard leaned forward. You're claiming to be the trust owner. I'm not claiming anything, Amari said. I'm stating a fact. Prove it. Amari pulled out a single sheet of paper. He slid it across the table to Howard. Share certificate. Issued 3 months ago. Converted to registered shares at 1400 hours today. Howard read it. His expression didn't change. But something in his posture shifted. He passed the document to the board member next to him. It traveled around the table. Each person who read it looked at Amari differently afterward. Not with respect yet, but with something new. Wariness. Recognition that the dynamic had changed. When it reached Matthew, he didn't pick it up. He stared at it like it might burn him. This isn't possible, he whispered. 18% of this company is worth $600 million. You're a janitor. I own a janitorial company, Amari corrected. I don't work for one. Then why are you cleaning my building? Because I own it too. The room went silent again. Different this time. Heavier. Matthew's voice shook. You've been setting this up. The whole time. I've been observing, Amari said. And documenting. Documenting what? Amari pulled another document from his briefcase. Every operational decision you made that violated fiduciary duty. Every expense account irregularity. Every undisclosed conflict of interest. He set the papers on the table. They spread out like cards in a poker hand. I have 6 months of evidence. Time-stamped. Witnessed. Notarized. Matthew's face had gone from red to white. That's impossible. Our internal audit found nothing. Your internal audit wasn't looking, Amari said. I was. Howard reached for the documents. Amari didn't stop him. Howard read the first page. His eyes widened. He flipped to the second page. Then the third. Matthew, he said quietly. We need to talk. Privately. No. Matthew's voice was desperate now. This is a setup. He's lying. These are bank statements, Howard said. Wire transfers. Email chains. This isn't a lie. Then he stole them. From our servers. That's illegal. They're public filings, Amari said. Anyone could request them. I just knew which ones to request. Matthew backed away from the table. His shoulders hit the glass wall behind him. He looked at Amari. Then at Howard. Then at the rest of the board. This isn't over, he said. I'll fight this. You can try, Howard said. But the vote is proceeding. Now. He tapped his tablet. The voting interface appeared on screens around the room. Amari sat back in his chair. He didn't touch his tablet. He didn't need to. His proxy vote had already been submitted. Matthew stayed against the wall. Watching. Waiting. Hoping the numbers would somehow shift in his favor. They didn't. The results appeared on the screens simultaneously. 3 lines of text. No graphics. No color coding. Just numbers. Matthew Adams, 48.2%. Remove with cause, 51.8%. Abstention, 0%. Matthew stared at the screen. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No sound came out. Howard set his tablet down. The motion passes. Matthew Adams is removed as CEO effective immediately. No. Matthew's voice was barely a whisper. No. This can't be legal. I want a recount. The votes are electronic, Howard said. There is no recount. This is final. Then I want an audit. Of the shares. Of the trust. Of him. Matthew jabbed a finger at Amari. He forged those documents. He has to have. The documents are authentic, Frank said. He'd returned to the room without anyone noticing. His tablet was still glowing. I verified them against the SEC filings. Everything matches. Matthew's legs buckled again. This time he slid down the glass wall until he was sitting on the floor. His $2,000 suit bunched awkwardly around his knees. He looked up at Amari. Why? He asked. Why did you do this? Amari didn't answer immediately. He pulled another document from his briefcase. This one was older. The paper had yellowed slightly at the edges. Do you remember a lawsuit 7 years ago? Amari asked. A small janitorial company sued for breach of contract. You were COO then. The company claimed you terminated their agreement without cause. They lost everything. Matthew's eyes widened. That was you. That was my father, Amari said. He died 6 months after the judgment. Heart attack. Stress-induced. The room was so quiet that the air conditioning sounded like wind. You've been planning this for 7 years, Matthew said. I've been building this for 7 years, Amari corrected. There's a difference. You wanted revenge. I wanted accountability. Amari's voice remained level. Calm. You broke a legal contract because it saved the company $3 million. My father's business was worth $4 million. You killed it to make a quarterly target. That was business. So is this. Matthew's phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket with shaking hands. The screen showed an incoming call from the board's legal counsel. He declined it. Then another call came in. And another. He turned the phone off and dropped it on the floor. What happens now? He asked. Security will escort you from the building, Howard said. You'll have until end of business Friday to remove your personal belongings. Your corporate accounts are frozen. Your company devices will be collected. I built this company. You managed it, Howard corrected. The shareholders own it. And they've decided you're not fit to continue. 2 security guards entered the room. They weren't the regular daytime staff. These were building security. Professionals. They moved with the quiet efficiency of people who'd done this before. Matthew looked at them, then at Amari, then at the guards again. Don't make this harder, one guard said. His voice was polite but firm. Matthew stood slowly. His legs shook. He brushed off his suit jacket even though there was nothing on it. Then he walked toward the door. The guards flanked him. Not touching, but close enough that running wasn't an option. At the doorway, Matthew stopped. He looked back at Amari. You'll regret this, he said. This company will collapse without me. Maybe, Amari said. But that's not your problem anymore. The guards let him out. The door closed. And Matthew Adams, CEO of a $14 billion company for 6 years, was gone. The board members sat in silence. Some looked at their tablets. Others stared at the empty chair at the head of the table. No one spoke. Howard cleared his throat. We need to address interim leadership. I nominate Amari King, Frank said. 3 other hands went up. Howard looked at Amari. Do you accept? Amari closed his briefcase. He stood. He walked slowly to the head of the table, to the chair Matthew had occupied 20 minutes ago. He didn't sit. He placed both hands on the back of the chair and looked at each board member in turn. I accept on 3 conditions, he said. 1. Every contract Matthew approved in the last 2 years gets reviewed. 2. We reinstate the 3 whistleblowers he fired for questioning his expenses. 3. My father's company gets a formal apology from this board. Howard wrote notes on his pad. Agreed. All 3 conditions. Then I accept. Amari sat down. The leather creaked under his weight. He adjusted the chair height. Then he opened his briefcase again and pulled out a bound report. This is a 90-day operational plan, he said. I wrote it 6 months ago. It addresses 12 critical inefficiencies and 3 legal vulnerabilities Matthew created. We start implementing it today. He slid copies across the table. Board members picked them up. Some started reading immediately. Howard smiled for the first time all meeting. You were very confident you'd be sitting in that chair. No, Amari said. I was prepared in case I was. Outside the boardroom, Matthew was being escorted through the lobby. Employees stared as he passed. Some whispered. Others pulled out phones. By the time he reached the street, 3 news outlets had already published alerts. Former CEO ousted in shareholder revolt. Mysterious investor takes control of tech giant. Whistleblower evidence surfaces in board coup. Matthew stood on the sidewalk. The sun was setting. The city moved around him like he wasn't there. His driver had the car idling at the curb, but Matthew didn't get in. He looked up at the building. 43 floors of glass and steel. His name was still on the directory inside. For now. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He'd turned it back on. 10 missed calls. 15 text messages. 3 from his lawyer. 5 from reporters. 2 from board members who'd voted against him. He deleted them all. Then he got in the car and told the driver to take him home. Inside the boardroom, Amari was still talking. Still explaining. Still leading. The transition was already happening. And no one was laughing anymore. The press release went out at 6:47 p.m. 3 paragraphs. No fluff. No corporate speak. Just facts. Effective immediately, Matthew Adams has been removed as CEO following a shareholder vote. Amari King has been appointed interim CEO. The board has opened an internal investigation into operational practices under previous leadership. By 7 p.m., it was trending on 5 platforms. By 8 p.m., 3 financial networks had called for comment. By 9 p.m., the company's stock had dropped 4% in after-hours trading. Amari watched the numbers from his new office. Not Matthew's old office. He'd specifically requested a different space. Smaller. Corner view. Less glass. He sat at the desk with his laptop open, reading through the operational reports Frank had compiled. A knock at the door. Come in, Amari said without looking up. Howard entered. He'd loosened his tie. He looked older in the evening light. Tired. The board wants to schedule a press conference, he said. Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. They want you to make a statement. What kind of statement? Confidence in the company. Plans for the future. The usual. Amari closed his laptop. I'm not giving the usual statement. Howard sat down in the chair across from him. What are you planning to say? The truth. Which truth? That Matthew Adams violated his fiduciary duty. That he prioritized short-term stock performance over long-term stability. That he silenced whistleblowers and manipulated expense reports. Amari met Howard's eyes. All of it. Howard was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned back in his chair. That will tank the stock. The stock is already tanking. It will get worse. Good, Amari said. Let it. We'll rebuild from honest ground. The board won't like that. The board voted me in. They knew what they were getting. Howard smiled slightly. Some of them did. Others were just voting against Matthew. Then they'll learn fast. Another knock. This time it was Frank. He looked even more exhausted than Howard. He carried a thick folder under one arm. We have a problem, Frank said. Which one? Amari asked. The legal team found 12 ongoing lawsuits that Matthew never disclosed to the board. 3 from former employees. 5 from vendors. 4 from competitors claiming IP theft. How did he hide them? Settlement agreements with confidentiality clauses. He used discretionary funds to pay them off without board approval. Amari opened his laptop again. How much? Total? 43 million. Howard swore under his breath. Amari didn't react. He pulled up a spreadsheet and started typing. Add it to the disclosure list, Amari said. We're releasing it tomorrow with the press conference. Frank stared at him. That's corporate suicide. It's corporate honesty, Amari said. If we bury it now, someone will find it later. Better to control the narrative. The narrative is that we're a disaster, Frank said. No. The narrative is that we were a disaster. And now we're fixing it. Amari turned his laptop toward them. Look at this. Operational costs are up 37% over 3 years. Revenue is up 22%. That gap is pure inefficiency. Matthew was bleeding the company to hit quarterly targets. Can you fix it? Howard asked. Not overnight, Amari said. But yes, in 18 months, we'll be profitable again. In 3 years, we'll be a model company. That's ambitious. That's realistic. Amari stood. He walked to the window. The city sprawled below him. Thousands of lights. Thousands of people. Thousands of stories happening simultaneously. Matthew built a company on shortcuts, Amari said. I'm going to rebuild it on systems. Frank set the folder on the desk. You'll need board approval for most of this. Then get it. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing is. Howard stood as well. He buttoned his jacket. One more question. Why did you really do this? Amari turned from the window. I told you. My father. That's part of it, Howard interrupted. But it's not all of it. You spent 7 years building this. That's not just revenge. What are you actually after? Amari was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. I want to prove something, he said. That a company can be successful without destroying people. That profit doesn't require exploitation. That the janitor can be the boss. And if you're wrong, then I'll fail, Amari said. But I'll fail honestly. Howard nodded. He seemed satisfied with that answer. He left the office. Frank followed him, still carrying the folder. Amari sat back down at his desk. He opened a new document on his laptop, titled it 90-Day Operational Plan Revised. Then he started typing. At 11:47 p.m., he was still typing. At 1:23 a.m., he finished. At 6:30 a.m., he was back at his desk, reviewing it. The press conference started at 9 a.m. exactly. Amari walked to the podium in a dark suit. No tie. He'd refused the makeup artist. His face looked exactly as it had in the boardroom the day before. Calm. Measured. Present. Reporters filled the room. Cameras lined the back wall. The feed was streaming live on 4 networks. Amari didn't read from notes. He spoke directly to the cameras. Yesterday, the board of directors removed Matthew Adams as CEO. I have been appointed as his replacement. This decision was made after evidence emerged of systematic violations of fiduciary duty, including undisclosed legal settlements, expense account fraud, and retaliation against whistleblowers. The reporters started shouting questions. Amari raised one hand. I'm not taking questions yet. I have more to say. The room quieted. This company has been operating on shortcuts, prioritizing quarterly reports over quarterly improvements, maximizing stock value while minimizing employee value. That ends now. He paused. The cameras kept rolling. Over the next 90 days, we will conduct a full audit of all operations. We will reinstate wrongfully terminated employees. We will review every contract signed in the last 2 years. And we will publish the results. All of them. Good and bad. Another wave of shouting. Amari didn't acknowledge it. I understand this will impact our stock price. I understand investors will be nervous. But I would rather lead an honest company worth $8 billion than a dishonest company worth 14. He stepped away from the podium. Now I'll take questions. The room erupted. Hands shot up. Voices overlapped. Amari pointed to a reporter in the front row. Mr. King, you were the company janitor. How do you expect anyone to take you seriously? Amari didn't smile. I was never the company janitor. I own the janitorial company that services this building, and 37 others. I've been observing this company's operations for 6 months. I probably know more about how it actually functions than anyone in this room. Another reporter. What makes you qualified to run a $14 billion company? I built a $50 million company from nothing, Amari said. And I did it without exploiting my employees, violating contracts, or lying to stakeholders. That's more qualification than most CEOs have. Another, will you pursue legal action against Matthew Adams? That's not my decision. That's for the board and legal counsel. But if evidence warrants it, yes. The questions kept coming. Amari answered each one the same way. Direct. Factual. No spin. At 9:47 a.m., he thanked the reporters and left the stage. By 10 a.m., the stock had dropped another 6%. By noon, 3 major investors had called for his resignation. By 2 p.m., 5 smaller investors had publicly backed him. By end of day, the stock had recovered 4 points. Amari didn't watch any of it. He was in the boardroom with Frank and the legal team, reviewing settlement documents. At 6 p.m., Howard knocked on his door again. The board wants another meeting, he said. When? Now. Amari stood. He grabbed his briefcase, followed Howard down the hall. The board was already seated when he entered. Some looked angry. Others looked curious. One woman in the back was smiling. Howard gestured to the head of the table. Amari sat. Some members have expressed concerns about your press conference, Howard said carefully. I'm sure they have. They think you were too transparent. They're probably right. They want to know if you plan to continue this approach. Amari set his briefcase on the table. Yes. One board member, a man named Gerald who'd been on the board for 19 years, leaned forward. Mr. King. With respect, transparency is admirable, but it's not always strategic. Lying is never strategic, Amari said. It's just slow suicide. We're not suggesting you lie. You're suggesting I manage the truth, which is the same thing. Gerald's face reddened. That's not fair. Neither was what Matthew did, Amari said. But we're not fixing that by doing the same thing with better PR. The room was silent. Then the woman in the back, Sarah, the youngest board member, spoke. I think he's right. Gerald turned to her. Excuse me? We voted Matthew out because he was dishonest. We can't replace him with someone who's just dishonest in a different way. I'm not suggesting dishonesty. Yes, you are, Sarah said. You're suggesting we hide the truth until it's convenient. That's exactly what Matthew did. 3 other board members nodded. Gerald looked at Howard. Is this your position as well? Howard glanced at Amari. Then back at Gerald. Yes. Gerald stood. Then I'm resigning. Okay, Amari said. Gerald stared at him. That's it? Just okay. If you disagree with honesty as a core principle, I don't want you on this board anyway. Gerald's mouth opened. Closed. He grabbed his briefcase and walked out. The door slammed behind him. No one else moved. Amari looked around the table. Anyone else? Silence. Good, he said. Then let's get to work. If this story got you thinking, hit that subscribe button. More stories like this coming soon.